Got any sevens?
No sevens here. Go fish.
Dang it. Oh, hey Miku. Has it been a month already?
We didn't explode. Hooray!
Miku? Hello?
Is something wrong, Miku?
I can't do plot right now. Not the time.
Miku, what's going on with you?
Do you want to play Go Fish with me and Minnie, Miku? I was about to ask if she had any aces.
Get that thing away from me!
The ace card? Why?
Let me guess. Gamerguyd?
Mini Miku, this is one of the worst videos I've ever seen.
And that's why we can't do plot this video?
Not when half my audience won't even be able to watch this.
Miku, the heck have you done?
Disclaimer. This video exists for the purposes of entertainment, education, and theory rebuttal. This video is not an attack on the creator of the theory, nor will it, unless otherwise stated, address the theory creator personally. Instead, the creator's name in this video will be used as either a name to address the theory by, or to address the assumed mindset of the creator at the time of this video's creation. Unless there is substantial evidence, it is not assumed the creator still stands behind the video in question. If you harass or witch hunt anyone involved with this video, I will personally disown you. Thank you. I'm going to make an extra disclaimer here right off the bat. This video gets really dark really fast. We're going to go over themes of drug abuse, intense delusional mania, and even suicide. This video will include none of my usual censorship either because frankly it wouldn't make a dent in the mature subject matter of this video. I urge you to keep these things in mind going forward, and if you're a child, maybe don't watch this video. I promise I'll have another video coming later this month that'll be more appropriate for you. Welcome back to Gamerguyd. It's been a while since my last foray into the content of Gamerguyd 7 Aces, hasn't it? Today we're looking at another one of his super old theories. Remember, relevancy is not my MO. This is going to be the theory that breaks me. Now, this is going to be a really bizarre video for a lot of reasons. I hope you can follow me though. This one's going to be hitting the fan really fast. With that out of the way, with no context actually given on my part, let's jump right in because I think the context is best given by Gamerguyd himself.
Nevertheless, I was never a big fan of these games. I liked them when I was younger and thought they were a cool transition for Sonic, but since I only owned the Sega Genesis and never owned the Dreamcast, I never understood all the huge love for this game.
Now, you might think it's weird for me to start here of all places, but I'm bringing this up in a second. Hold on to it.
Now I like to be very open-minded of things, and I like to browse the web from time to time to read people's opinions of certain things. And I came across a post that's several years old. It's from a blogger, and he wrote a blog on why he thinks Sonic Adventure 2 has the best story in gaming, period.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the fact that my main target today isn't even Gamerguyd. See, this is one of those theory videos where the presenter decides to just pull a forum post and use that as the meat of their entire video. In this scenario, Guyd is essentially going to be a talking head because Guyd literally repeats every word Xavier says word for word once he gets into the theory. Smooth one, Guyd. So, who are we actually talking to for this video? Well, we're talking to Lord Xavier British, a user of the Giant Bomb forums. The post in question was made on October 16, 2011, nearly 4 years before Gamerguy's video. Xavier's post was essentially an entire thesis, and Guyd goes over all of the big points in his video because essentially Guyd is just reading off the post word for word. That's why, instead of talking to Guyd, I'm going to be addressing Xavier instead. Guyd is pretty much the mouthpiece here and just echoes every single one of Xavier's thoughts and opinions to the letter. And I mean all of them. Yeah, remember when I told you to remember that thing Gamerguyd said like 2 seconds ago? Well, Xavier actually not only echoes the sentiment of not caring for Adventure 2, but takes it one step farther.
I don't even like Sonic Adventure 2. No one likes Sonic Adventure 2. Not even the people who said that. They are liars.
This is a disgusting mindset that's also echoed through most of the rest of the comments on this post because people can't learn to be decent human beings and not bash in the heads of people that happen to like a game. I'm not going to go through the whole can we not discussion again because I already did that in my MatPat video a couple months ago, but this legitimately pisses me off. To say something new, people can like a game. Sonic Adventure 2 is highly praised for a reason. Even if it wasn't, people can like a game. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be something you like. No one has the right to tell someone that they're wrong for liking something. End of story. I'm going to move on from this point because I don't want to go on a tirade again, but this is the kind of person we're dealing with here. Heck, this isn't even Gamerguyd's opinion. I have faith that Gamerguyd has enough common sense not to think like this. This mindset is toxic and disgusting. Frick off, good sir. This is uncalled for.
Of course, this sounded laughable at first. The Sonic Adventure series is remembered for its ridiculous music, voice acting, and tacked-on story.
Yep, this is another one of Xavier's sentiments lifted straight from the post. No, that's not what the Adventure series is remembered for, idiot. I'm a Sonic fan. I've wandered the realms of hundreds of Sonic fans in my time as a Sonic fan. What I've most seen the Adventure games remembered for are their deep stories, exciting action, and fun gameplay. For the most part. They're not perfect. There are several examples of where the experimenting went wrong, but that's not the point. What Xavier's presenting here is the mindset of someone that didn't like the games. While it's fine to not like the games, it's not fine to project that opinion onto every single Sonic fan. Like it or not, the general consensus is that these games had deep, meaningful stories, and that's the crux of why people still remember them to this day. Yes, the dialogue and voice acting could get cheesy at times, but that shouldn't be the point of discussion here. We're talking about whether or not the story was tacked on, which absolutely is not the case because both adventure games heavily revolved around their stories, which dictated the level designs and even gameplay mechanics of the games themselves. You can't separate the stories from these games or they're not even the same games.
But few people, however, know that some of that music, namely the themes accompanying the Knuckles levels, were written by longtime Sega audio producer Tomoya Ohtani in association with rapper Hunted P.
Long time in this context is deceptive. Sonic Adventure 2 was actually the very first game Ohtani produced music for.
Hidden within each of these seemingly incomprehensible songs is the tale of a very confused soul, lost in the reality of its own design, that is struggling to come to terms with the profound realization of its utter powerlessness in the world.
Now we're starting to get into the meat of things. This theory is about how the entirety of Sonic Adventure 2 is a delusion in Knuckles' drug-pumped mind. We're really having fun today, aren't we?
Now, some of you are wondering why you haven't heard of this before. Good question. It was in 2007 that the blogger first stumbled upon a MySpace post by Ohtani linked to him through an IRC chat room, nearly 6 years after the game's original Dreamcast release. Sega must have ordered the post taken down before it caught mainstream attention. Perhaps it was simply out of a fear that they would appear more ignorant to their customers, but I can think of no other reason as to why this sudden information would suddenly disappear from the net without a trace. It's quite shocking that there is virtually no information on this.
Congratulations! There goes your credibility! Let's go over every single reason why this claim is shady as all get out and most likely a bold-faced lie. First, Xavier claims that he received the link to Ohtani's MySpace post through a chat room. We'll get into said page in a moment, but the more important point is that this was apparently done in 2007, a full 4 years before Xavier's post was made. Why would it take Xavier 4 years to chronicle this? Furthermore, Xavier claims the post was removed before it caught mainstream attention, and that he has yet to find the original or a duplicate copy. This is one of the absolute fishiest parts of this whole affair. This essentially makes it so that no one can fact-check his claims and they just have to take his word for it. That's shady as frick, and I have a lot of trouble believing it. Xavier actually provides a link to what is supposedly Tomoya Ohtani's MySpace page. At first, this would seem to check out, as when I search for other potential pages for Tomoya Ohtani on MySpace using both his English and Japanese lettered names, I came out blank. The page in Xavier's post, though, is most likely fake. The page is nearly barren, only having 3 songs and an entire gallery of broken images, the latter of which I can only assume is a byproduct of some major site overhaul on MySpace's part, but the former being much more concerning. There are absolutely no other posts on this page. It's also some sort of joint account between who's assumed to be Ohtani and the rapper Hunted P. This alone would make the most likely assumption at this point that this account is merely promotional and couldn't be a personal account for Ohtani. Then you realize that the location set for this account is Lubbock, Texas. In all my research, I couldn't find a single link between Sega, whose American headquarters is based in California, and this nearly insignificant town in Texas. The only thing the town's even known for is being the birthplace of Buddy Holly, which has nothing to do with Sega or the Sonic franchise. Thusly, the most logical conclusion to make is that this account is a fake and there's no legitimate Tomoya Ohtani MySpace account, much less any legitimate MySpace post from Ohtani. This absolutely destroys any credibility this theory might have had before any of its points are presented. I'm honestly surprised Guide couldn't come to this conclusion himself, but here we are. For Xavier's sake, though, let's go through this little thesis of his and really dissect why this whole thing is a load of absolute garbage.
There are a few things essential to understanding the story to the fullest. Number 1, this is a monologue. Every song is quick to remind us that this is an account of Knuckles' thoughts in the first person in the beginning of every song. This is a tale told by its narrator, and as such there are things to consider. Is Knuckles being completely truthful to the audience? Is he even being completely truthful to himself?
You can't call into question the credibility of your source like that. That just makes everything that much more shaky.
Number 2, Ohtani never had the final say on the music for each song. Although he did have a general idea of what the music would be like for each track before he composed the lyrics, he never actually had an influence on the final pieces of music his words were performed over. He would often be forced by Sega to completely redo a song, giving him very little time to fix the lyrics for each new master. As such, the meaning of the lyrics and the context the music places into them may seem to clash at times, but keep in mind that in most cases these are two separate bodies of work.
Here's the thing about this claim. It's false. We actually have proof of that from Hunted P himself.
We all sat down and had a meeting, and they asked me, what they wanted the Knuckles boss to be like and everything in detail. And it was like I had literally one day to do it, and it was like back to back 1, 2, 3. It was just like we spoke about it. I wrote all the lyrics, and the next following day we recorded it in the studio in Manhattan, and that was it. It was like paperwork and music that I went off the game. It wasn't ready yet, so I wasn't able to play it. So I just went off of like the music and stuff and paperwork they gave me about, detailed things that they wanted to incorporate in the Knuckles concept. They got down really to the point, and they let me do my thing. I could say that. You know what I'm saying? They didn't have no kind of interaction with what I wrote as far as what I came back with to them. They just loved it. It all worked out.
This makes the process very clear. Ohtani wrote the instrumentals first, then Sega sent those and a write-up of the premises of each level to Hunted P, who then proceeded to write all of the lyrics. This means the lyrics weren't even Ohtani's work. They were all the work of Hunted P.
Number 3, the final level in which all the characters team up is not canon to Ohtani's story. He had no creative control over the music in this part, and thus it should not be considered part of his work.
Hey, genius! You can't just throw out an entire part of a game like that. That's not okay. If you were only analyzing the songs themselves, then I could see where this comes from, but this theory is trying to project itself over the entirety of the game, and this is where the notion falls apart. You can't just throw out a huge chunk of the game. It's integral to the rest of the story of the game, and it's definitely canon.
Number 4, there was a song cut from the game. Early in development, there was going to be one more Knuckles level in the game, a snow level. This was actually the last Knuckles only section, and thus it was originally the final act of Ohtani's epic. I do not, as previously stated, have a copy of the original blog post in which Ohtani revealed the true meaning behind his lyrics. However, I will attempt to recount the final chapter's general overview as best as I can.
We're going to talk a lot more about this supposed lost song when it comes, but wow, Guide, just go ahead and read Xavier's post verbatim then, why don't ya?
With that out of the way, let's get on to the part you've all been waiting for.
This is Knuckles, and I'm back. I've been away for a while.
Kick the Rock is the first and most unassuming of the Ohtani tracks. It's a very lighthearted, very fun song. It is meant as a reintroduction to the world of Sonic the Hedgehog and what it's all about. Basically, it's a setup for things to come. However, don't be fooled by the upbeat rhythm. There is darker subtext work here.
Yeah, we'll get to this. Give it a minute.
The first thing we notice is the use of the word Echidona in the line 1 of the second stanza. Not only is Knuckles not an Echidona, but Echidona is not actually a word. Knuckles is an echidna, and for Sega to have made such a slip-up with their own character would normally be inexcusable.
I'm going to take this in two separate directions right fast just to show how dumb this is. First, let's go along with Xavier right fast and go under the assumption that Ohtani wrote the lyrics even though that's factually incorrect. Ohtani is Japanese. How would the Japanese pronounce echidna? Echidona. That's literally the Japanese syllables for that word. If Ohtani wrote the lyrics, it would make sense for the word to be pronounced as Echidona over 4 syllables. As a Vocaloid fan, I've heard enough of this to know that it happens all the time with Japanese written English songs. But the lyrics weren't written by Ohtani. They were written by Hunted P, who's American. That's what you're saying, right? Well, we're still looking at a stylized pronunciation here. Hunted wanted to stretch the word over the first 4 beats, and Echidona was the most logical way to do it, even if it makes no sense. In the long run, that explanation solves nothing, but what I'm about to say in the next bits of this should clear up why this point is fundamentally stupid.
However, this was no slip-up. This was intentional. Here we see Ohtani begin to play with the idea that Knuckles is beginning to realize that he isn't sure who he is anymore.
How about no? Knuckles isn't losing his identity in this song. In fact, this song reinforces his identity more than anything, particularly with the line, "I gotta protect this place, I do it for my race." Knuckles very much knows who he is, the guardian of the Master Emerald, Angel Island, and subsequently the entire world. That's why he does what he does. Echidona, that's what I'm representing, in its proper context, is an affirmation of Knuckles' identity.
This is further implied by the line, "Never seen a Mike Hog spit like a menace," as Knuckles is also not a hedgehog.
This line has a deeper meaning than you give it credit for. It's not meant to imply that Knuckles is a hedgehog. That would be stupid. Instead, the term Mike Hog is used in a metaphorical sense. The term usually applies to someone that hogs the spotlight, particularly in contexts that involve microphones. The mic part applies to the fact that this is a rap, but the hog part could be interpreted several ways in a metaphorical sense. My personal preferred interpretation is that it more refers to the fact that Knuckles' levels, more often than not, butt in to interrupt the flow of the story in progress, which could be interpreted as Knuckles hogging the spotlight. That's just me, though, and there could be other ways to interpret the line.
This line specifically may be one of the early warning signs that Sonic and the rest of the cast are all actually Knuckles himself, drug-fueled personas created by a desperate imagination trying to hang on to the illusion.
Here's where the everything's fake and Sonic's just a hallucination Knuckles' imagination comes in. It's not clear exactly what Xavier's talking about when he says this, but there are 3 ways this could go. One is that the entire franchise is Knuckles' illusion, which would make absolutely no sense, but most of why comes up later in this theory. Another is that only this game is an illusion, which makes even less sense because the events of this game are referenced in future games, meaning that it can't all be fake. The third is that this game and everything after it are illusions, which also makes no sense when we come to later in this theory. Basically, keep these 3 interpretations in the back of your mind. They'll come back later.
There are also some other mature themes briefly glanced over in this song, like sex.
No! The only time something even remotely similar to this is brought up is in the line, "Yeah, Rouge, she's sexy and smooth," but that's referring to her looks, and Knuckles later goes into great detail about how much he dislikes Rouge, ending off with a very firm, "Give up the emerald or die, I don't love you." Also, besides this brief tangential mention, Rouge is brought up a grand total of 0 other times in this entire analysis. Rouge is the entire reason Knuckles is in this situation to begin with. You would think Xavier would actually freaking bring her up.
Knuckles' often rash and violent nature.
The hallmark of his character since his introduction. What's the freaking problem?
And of course, drug references. Although Tiny never specified what Knuckles would have been consuming, it's possible he was consuming crack cocaine. This is implied by the title Kick the Rock, as well as Knuckles' constant paranoia regarding the safety of his Master Emerald.
Here we are. Welcome to drugs. We're going to get a little deeper into this notion in a hot second, but I want to debunk the supposed analogy right fast. We have the title of the song, Kick the Rock. Even if the rock part of the title was referring to crack cocaine, it would immediately be voided by the first part of the title. Generally, when talking about kicking a drug, that means quitting, not starting. It would contradict the entire point of the theory. Secondly, we're going to get into more about the Master Emerald later, so keep this one in the back of your mind.
Although this would not explain the extreme level of hallucination he is experiencing throughout the story, it is never implied that Knuckles is only taking one type of drug, so he could in fact be partaking multiple substances.
I did not need to see that image for that long, guide. Furthermore, you can't just say the title means crack and the Master Emerald is crack, then go on to say the main culprit is a different drug. That doesn't make sense. If the main culprit is a different drug, then the symbolism should be pointing toward that drug, not this side drug that's not really doing anything. Good going.
The important things to recognize are the metaphors Ohtani is using with the ghosts and pumpkins. Basically, the ghosts represent the few remaining scraps of Knuckles' conscious, waking mind that realize the truth of his situation, whereas the pumpkins are the hallucinations, created by his subconscious in self-defense against recognizing reality. As Knuckles comes closer to the truth of his dream world's fabrication, they begin to transform into horrifying abominations in an attempt to ward him away back into their comforting embrace.
Nice try, but there's only one place in the song where the word pumpkin is even mentioned aside from the name of the location, Pumpkin Hill. That would be the line, "I'm walking through valleys crying pumpkin in the alley," which I can't understand for the life of me. I'm sorry, I'm no rap expert. Even so, the song clearly isn't trying to make a comparison. It's focused on the ghosts. Furthermore, it's a fact that the ghosts live within Pumpkin Hill, which also messes with this whole analogy. Essentially, the whole point of the song is Knuckles being scared of the ghosts and not wanting to admit it. The entire song, he's denying his fear. Heck, he's not even okay with the pumpkins if the song is any indication.
This is further expounded upon in the title, A Ghost Pumpkin Soup, that denotes the fact that this wretched dreamscape in which Knuckles now resides was, originally, a creation of his waking mind attempting to escape its frustrations with the world.
But weren't the ghosts and the pumpkins supposed to be directly opposed? Why are they suddenly in league with each other? This analogy makes no sense. I swear, this entire thing is pumpkin soup.
This is also the first song in which the true nature of the Master Emerald is revealed. The Master Emerald is, in actuality, Knuckles' mind. Every time it comes close to completion, it is broken apart as he suffers yet another mental breakdown, further isolating him from the reality which he so feverishly denies.
You can't just switch the analogy like that, Xavier. The Master Emerald can't be both crack cocaine and Knuckles' psyche. That's not how this song and dance works.
The two most interesting lines here are those of 8 and 9 in the second stanza. Knuckles explains that his graveyard theory is that a ghost tried to approach him but got leery. Let's look at it from the perspective of the ghost as a metaphor for Knuckles' waking mind. Knuckles' conscious mind, the one that is aware of the falsity of the illusion, approaches him attempting to bring him back into reality. However, it gets leery before it is able to do so.
This probably seems crazy, a graveyard theory. A ghost tried to approach me and got leery. Knuckles is not associating himself with the ghost here. Instead, this is another instance of him denying his fear of the ghost, as he believes the ghost should be scared of him, not the other way around. I get that this is just me throwing out another interpretation, but at least it's an interpretation that makes sense.
Knuckles then begins frantically climbing, the menacing anecdotes issuing forth from the pumpkins, corrupting his every thought, trying to find any semblance of rationale behind the events that are beginning to tear his world apart.
This assumption comes from the one line, "I searched and I searched as I climbed up the wall." This line says nothing that could be misconstrued like Xavier has misconstrued it.
He then jumps off and begins flying deeper. Deeper, not into darkness, but into his own consciousness, desperately searching for answers.
And then I started to fly. I went in deeper. I mean, heck, can we just make anything out of anything now? Okay, I'm pretty much skipping this section. Why am I skipping the aquatic mind section? Because what Xavier says about dive into the mellow can't be picked apart. It's a larger problem spanning across the entire analysis, namely that the meanings of the songs are being twisted to fit this drug-induced hallucination narrative. Xavier says that Dive Into the Mellow is about Knuckles nearly finding reality, but it's slipping away from him at the last moment as he's still being haunted by the hallucinations. He also says it's about Knuckles starting to question his entire sense of self. The only lines he even brings up to this end are, "Makes you want to sit back, enjoy the life, and do the things you like doing, get to shine. It sure beats fighting with them foes all the time, but I gotta do it, they always stay out of line." This perfectly illustrates how backwards this whole analysis is. Those lines in particular perfectly illustrate the true purpose of this song. Xavier was on the right track, but never really got there. Yes, this song is Knuckles questioning his entire identity, but it's in a sense of his duty as guardian of the Master Emerald, not his mental state. This is made clear through other lines as well, like, "Sometimes I want to just chill and land, but I'm the protector of the emeralds and gems." By twisting the lyrics in the manner Xavier is, you're losing the real meaning of the lyrics and throwing them into a basket they don't belong in. And now we come to...
And here is where we finally arrive, the breaking point. This is the climax of the story and where everything starts to fall apart for Knuckles. This is where Knuckles' darkest fears finally take over and drop him into a terrifying realm known as Death Chamber.
Never mind that the entire game has an overarching story up to this point that leads to this level, and Knuckles isn't the only dang character in the game, you moron.
This is the beginning of the song when Knuckles starts to panic. He knows that what he is seeing isn't right, but he is still apprehensive. He is actually starting to realize what has been going on, but he doesn't want to accept it.
Masterful editing on your part, Guide, but the lines you're talking about way before you actually talk about them. Wonderful. For context again, the lines Guide is talking about are written as, "From front to back, all I see is stones, I'm glad that I don't call this home." I say written as because the lyric is actually, "All I see is thorns, not stones." Thorns makes more sense in context as the base is full of thorns in a metaphorical sense, the evil things in the base that want to hurt him. All I see is stones wouldn't make any sense because Knuckles is currently looking for stones and he has no problem with them even according to this theory's rules. In that regard, what the heck are you talking about, Xavier? Where did you get this crap from?
We can see this apprehension specifically in "I don't call this home." This statement wasn't prompted. In fact, he had no reason to say it at all. Except it is his home. It is his mind. But he wants to believe above all hope that this is just another horrible hole in the earth that his emerald somehow fell into.
No. Literally no. The line was definitely meant to be taken literally in a literal context. We're talking about a real place, and Knuckles actually saying, "I'm glad I don't call this home." It's also hardly unprompted. He's talking about the thorns in the previous statement, Eggman and the ghosts in the pyramid, and saying that, unlike them, he's glad he doesn't call the pyramid home. Literal statement. Literally, why do you do this?
Now this is very interesting and really brings to bear the crux of the story. Eggman wants to steal our soul? I'm pretty sure that has never been Eggman's motive. And notice the wording. He wants to steal our soul, not our souls or my soul, our soul. This is further confirmed by the re-emergence of the idea of the Master Emerald. Once again, the idea of the emerald as the pieces of Knuckles' mind is brought up again. With Eggman, who we can only assume at this point is the ultimate manifestation of Knuckles' damaged psyche, wants to build a throne out of the emerald so that he can gain control of the Echidna and keep him safe from reality once and for all. Need I say more?
And once again, we have incorrect lyrics. Maybe. I'll grant that it's hard to make out what the correct lyric is in that spot. Most I can make out just listening is Eggman wants to steal the something. It's either soul or stone, but I can't make it out through listening alone and I have conflicting sources. So let's argue both. If it's soul, it most likely does not mean any literal soul or souls. Instead, it can mean either their lives or their peace. Or soul could, and most likely would, be referring to the Master Emerald or the Chaos Emeralds, which are essentially the heart and soul of Sonic and Friends' world. If Eggman stole those, it would be like stealing the soul of their world, and it would also lend itself to interpretation of the full line, Eggman wants to steal the soul, keep the emeralds, and build a throne. This would also be the same if the word were stone instead of soul. Either way, Eggman's not out there looking to literally steal souls. This time you went too literal. Ironic, really.
And it is then that we come to what may be one of the most simultaneously beautiful and terrifying pieces of music ever created.
You can tell that Guy's just reading this in the post and scrunching up his nose having to say this, and that's hilarious to me.
The argument.
Sonic, what are you doing here? I heard you on a quest for the Master Emerald. You know me and you don't get along. I don't think that's the point right now, Knuckles. I know how much the Emerald means to you, and I want to help get it back. Stop being stubborn and think. Well, I guess you're right. You're damn right, Knuckles. I know Eggman's secret station's here somewhere. All we have to do is find it. I know we'll need a key to get inside. That's our only way to find it. So let's go.
It is here that Ohtani really shines as both a lyricist and a storyteller. So much struggle, so much anguish, and then that release.
I genuinely don't know what you're seeing here, Xavier. I think the question should turn from what is Knuckles on to what are you on? Also, if any of you didn't know this part of the song existed in the game, you're right. It doesn't. This part of the song was removed for the game release, only appearing on album versions of the song. I could call this part into question for that alone, but I won't and keep going.
This part can be a little difficult to follow, so allow me to break it down. Just as Knuckles is about to give in, perhaps even opting to commit suicide, Sonic appears out of nowhere and urges him to go on, to not give up and keep charging ahead. Obviously, if there was any doubt, this pretty much steals the fact that Sonic is just another personality created by Knuckles. Sonic isn't real.
Screw off with this whole Sonic isn't real nonsense. They both entered the pyramid together, and that's why this part exists. This whole part is essentially a summation of how Knuckles' quest came to this point. This delves into Knuckles' dynamic with Sonic, what seems to be their dynamic every time they meet up. This is another part of the journey Knuckles is taking throughout the songs of his levels. His journey of self-discovery involves Sonic, and involves Knuckles figuring out his relationship with Sonic.
But there is more to it than that. It was generally a consensus at the time.
Did you catch that one? It was generally a consensus at the time. I'm gonna catch Xavier in this trap later too, so prepare for more on this then, but keep this in your minds because it's very, very important.
It was generally a consensus at the time that, much like Eggman, Sonic is the avatar of the remaining pieces of Knuckles' waking mind and most likely always has been.
Now here's where Xavier starts picking up some of the pieces of this whole everything's a hallucination bit. Remember, we had option 1, everything's fake, option 2, only SA2 is fake, and option 3, SA2 and everything past it is fake. This statement alone puts options 2 and 3 on thin ice, making the only plausible interpretation that absolutely everything about the entire Sonic franchise was all a hallucination in Knuckles' mind. This makes absolutely zero sense, and I'm pretty dang sure drug trips don't work like that. Keep this on your minds too, though. This is also coming back again later. Essentially, this entire section just devolves into word soup. Nothing makes sense, everything's incomprehensible, and Xavier continues with the assertion that Sega ruined Ohtani's magnum opus or something stupid like that, even though that couldn't be further from the truth. That said, I'm skipping the rest of the segment and getting to the juiciest part of the video. You thought we were done? We still have one stage to go.
In the original version of Sonic Adventure 2, Knuckles would defeat Eggman only to fall to Earth, landing atop a gigantic snow-covered mountain, which he would then snowboard down, much akin to the first Sonic level of the game. This was intended to be a reward for the player and a break from the normal gameplay of the Knuckles levels. It is assumed there were to be more than 6 levels in early development. Further into development, it was going to serve as an interactive overlay for the credits.
Every single bit of this information is false. There was no Lost Knuckles snowboarding level, and it was not supposed to be an interactive credits sequence. That was never a thing. If it was, it would be severely out of place with the rest of the game. This thing does not exist. Welcome to the part of the theory where Xavier lies out his rear end for the entire rest of the post. I hope you enjoy your stay.
This was when Ohtani got a hold of it. Snowbank Mountain was cut relatively early, so while Ohtani never was able to complete a finished lyric sheet for this section of the game, he did in fact have a finale written out.
Once again, Ohtani did not write the lyrics for these songs. Sit back down.
Ohtani did give some idea of what he had intended to do with the ending in his MySpace post.
The one that totally exists and wasn't just made up.
But he was never explicitly clear about some major details, hoping that each individual could draw their own conclusions to the story that would satisfy them. The 2 most popular theories at the time were as follows.
Gotcha! See again? I'll give you a bit more time. In the meantime, way to be vague as frick. It's way too obvious you're just making all this up off the top of your head, Xavier.
A majority of people believe that Snowbank Mountain was in fact the mountain of drugs, and that having been exhausted in the final battle with Eggman, that his subconscious took the opportunity to take back control of Knuckles and send him, quite literally, spiraling down into oblivion. It is assumed that the ride down the mountain is paranoid Knuckles, who has lost all control on a deranged drug spree, and that the final blackout to credit is, in actuality, meant to represent his death. In this version of the ending, the title could be considered black humor or even ironic, as Knuckles' true self turns out to be the animalistic, impulsive-driven drug fiend he had been all along, and there never was truly any hope for release for him other than death.
This is downright creepypasta material and I hate it. Also, notice the shift. Before we were talking about songs. Now we're talking about the scrapped level instead of the supposed song for the level. This, more than anything, should solidify Xavier's lie and make it clear that this is a load of bullcrap.
Many were unsatisfied with such an obvious and quite frankly disappointing twist to what had otherwise been a masterful crafted tale. Many believed that Ohtani was far better than this and set out to dig deeper into the previous entries to derive the true meaning of Find Myself.
And so Xavier's hubris comes crashing down on him. This entire time, Xavier's been highly inconsistent about his descriptions of the fictional Ohtani post and its status among the community. When he started this analysis, he was firm about the fact that this post was not common knowledge and that Sega took it down quickly to avoid anyone seeing it. Now suddenly there's an entire community of theory crafters on top of this post, and no one archived any of it? I don't buy that at all. Get out of here with that. We'll come back to this thought in my final thoughts though, because there's still more to go.
The biggest clue was when Ohtani mentioned that he had made a major revision to Find Myself upon learning that it would become a credit stage. Now, why would that be?
Thankfully, Guide opts to skip a bit here where Xavier simps for Ohtani some more. Thanks for that, Xavier.
Well, the credits themselves would be the multiple personalities of Knuckles. The friends he had come to love and cherish over the years he spent with them, slowly disappearing from him as he slipped more and more back into reality as he cruised down the mountain. Knuckles would never face the camera, he would never look back until the game was over. There wouldn't even be any lyrics this time, just an eerie silence.
No, I don't buy that. That's stupid. Yeah, just throw music out the window. Just have silence. Great idea for a composer to decide. This man's job is literally to compose music. He's not just gonna not compose music for a freaking credit sequence. Are you crazy?
The game would end with a cut to black and complete silence as the Sonic Team logo came up for one last time and simply hung there, waiting for the player to provide input for the game to continue. The player themselves would have to cast away Sonic, not only a character that gamers around the world have known and loved for decades, but also the last and only true friend Knuckles ever had, even if he was imaginary. The player themselves would have to pull the final plug on Knuckles' warped reality and finally set him free.
This basically encompasses one of the biggest problems with this theory. Speaking of, theory's over. It's time for final thoughts. There are a lot of huge problems with this theory. Let me work backwards on this one. First of all, this theory wanted to pretend like most of the cast of Sonic Adventure 2 didn't exist and most of the story of the game didn't happen. This theory assumed that Knuckles was the main character of the game and everything revolved around him. Again, I'll say that if this were just an analysis of the songs, that would be one thing and it'd negate this entire problem. But it wasn't, and that's where the whole thing fell apart. Second, this theory was dead set on twisting the meanings of the lyrics of these songs to fit its own narrative. It didn't let the songs tell their own stories. These songs tell a lot about Knuckles' character, but the songs weren't allowed to say anything but what Xavier wanted them to say. A lot of the lyrics were twisted by the arm to achieve a clearly unintended outcome, and that's not cool at all. Thirdly, this theory was horrifically misinformed. This theory wanted to parade around that Ohtani was the lyricist for these songs when he really wasn't. This made absolutely everything fall apart from the word go. Finally, and most majorly though, this theory was built on a foundation of lies and deception. I don't know if every lie was deliberate, but I know for a fact that there were very intentional lies within this post, and I absolutely despise them. This is intentionally trying to mislead people with false information. This is disgusting, and I hate it with every fiber of my being. Between that and the toxic mindset, I have very little respect for Xavier after this. I sincerely hope he looks back on all this with shame. I don't even really blame Guide for this one. Guide in this scenario was just another victim. For once in my life, I kind of feel sorry for him. Although I don't actually. 2 seconds of critical thinking should have told Guide that this was a bad idea. This entire thing was obviously false, and Guide thinking it had any shred of legitimacy to it was his first mistake. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go lie down. See you in that other video later this month.
Wait, so you really won't let us to plot that?